A house just floated away. 2 houses just floated away. Help!
The town didn't know what was coming.
1 minute it looked like it was just going to be an ordinary sort of a flood, and the next minute it was just like a tidal wave came through.
Eugowra wasn't as prepared as it really should have been.
Ready? Push the button. Go.
Sage Wycamp has no memory of the flood that nearly claimed her life. She was just 6 days old when it hit.
By the time we got to the front door, there was horses being washed away down this street.
Through chest-deep water, Kira Lee carried Sage to the manhole in the bathroom.
I used the door handle here, and I got to the top of the door. And when I got onto the top of the door and was balancing, I'd sat Sage up.
Kira Lee hauled herself in and was trapped in darkness as the water rose. She could hear helicopters above.
And then I'm stuck up here, I can't get out. Like I've got a newborn baby who I can't even lay down to try and, crawl around this roof to find something to break through the roof with. I had nothing.
Were you worried that the water was going to keep rising?
Yeah, and I was going to drown up there, yeah.
It took 3 hours for rescuers to reach her. 124 people were winched to safety that day, one of the largest aerial rescue operations in Australian history. Her neighbour, 85-year-old Les Vujek, was last seen in his backyard calling out for help. His body was found downstream 5 days later.
How sad is it thinking about what happened to Les?
It is very sad. Wishing that we could have got to him, but it just came so fast.
Over the past month, a coronial inquest has examined how an entire town was caught unaware. What hit Eugowra in 2022 was labelled an inland tsunami. 2 were killed, 80% of homes and businesses damaged or destroyed.
This flood was different to the other floods the community's seen. Not only was it bigger, what happened is it happened much, much faster. And so what people thought from the floods they'd seen before about what would happen is not what happened in this flood.
At the inquest, hydrologist Mark Babister explained how the unimaginable flood happened. He says 12 months of heavy rain meant the land upstream couldn't absorb any more water, significantly contributing to the speed and height of the flood.
Most of the water was coming down this way, not in the creek in town. And it came down like a wave because it picked up all the canola in this paddock, and that was in front of the waters, and it sort of held back the water temporarily. So when it got to town here, as that wave came through, the water level changed dramatically. Many spots went from being dry to quite deep, over 1 metre deep, nearly instantaneously.
The inquest has been examining the adequacy of emergency warning systems. At 9:07am, the Bureau of Meteorology warned Eugowra residents to expect a flood of around 10.5 metres that afternoon. But some 20 minutes later, an unprecedented 11 metres of water smashed the town.
It's hard to produce accurate warnings, and on this particular occasion the Bureau's warnings were not very good. They occurred after the flood had peaked.
RFS volunteer Patrick Welsh didn't wait for further warnings before mobilising at about 7am.
The first thing I remember seeing is a car floating across the road. We knew we were going to be in for a big one.
One of the first people he picked up was a very grateful Diane Smith from her house in North Street.
We carried her through waist-deep water into the truck dry, dropped her off to the bridge. She turned to me and said, "Thank you, Patrick, I owe you a beer." And that's the last words Diane spoke to me as she walked off. There was probably 30 civilians at the bridge, young kids jumping in puddles, riding around on push bikes. It was very, very calm, safe area at that time.
Based off previous experience and flood modelling, it seemed very clear to locals which houses would be impacted and where safety could be found. The thinking went, if you're on the western side of the bridge, you'd probably be flooded, but if you're on the eastern side, you're mostly in the clear. That's not how things played out that day.
A lot of people in town lost houses and property and furniture and memories. And I lost all of that, and Mum.
Diane Smith's son Chris gave evidence at the inquest. He described the last time they spoke on the phone, After she'd been dropped off by the RFS, she had borrowed a ute and was driving away from the bridge to what was traditionally safer ground.
She said, I'm in the water. I was in a ute driving down the road. I've been washed off the road. A wave came, washed off the road. The last thing I said to Mum was, stay where you are, I'll come and get you. And I wasn't able to get there.
Diane Smith's body was found 2 days later.
As per the flood message, it says to stay with family and friends or alternative accommodation away from flooding. Diane went to her friend's house that morning, which historically was on the high side of town in a spot that doesn't flood.
The SES told the inquest its warnings were not timely and lacked critical information, like where people should evacuate to. It also said that inadequate information was issued by the Bureau of Meteorology. Farmer Max Granston lives about 8 kilometres from Eugowra.
Came through in like a wave. I think it rose over a metre in about 20 minutes. I don't know anybody who's ever seen or heard of it happening before.
His property houses one of 2 upstream telemetric gauges managed by Water New South Wales. They provide crucial real-time flood data to the Bureau of Meteorology. Max tried to check the gauge that day and quickly realised it wasn't working.
I got to here to where the site meter is, and it was up over the 9 metre mark. And I thought,
Overhead.
yeah, well and truly.
The inquest heard that both upstream gauges failed, one because a tree fell on it, the other stopped sending data at critical times because the bad weather caused network disruptions.
So nothing was working, it was all gone.
Water New South Wales admitted the gauges did not serve their purpose for the SES to do their job. It told the inquest its gauges could be considered critical flood infrastructure, but are not flood-proof. The single gauge in town is this old-fashioned marked post, which can only be read manually. The pink line represents the height of the flood that morning. The gauge was completely submerged.
I think it would have made a substantial difference if the gauge in town was telemetered or electronically connected back to the Bureau's office where they're doing the forecasts. They would have seen things happening in town much faster than what they were predicting. They would have changed their modelling to reflect that.
The Weather Bureau told the inquest live data from town would have enabled them to provide a better flood service, and that a lack of funding has made it difficult to maintain and upgrade thousands of flood warning instruments across Australia. Last year, it received $236 million to upgrade national infrastructure. Eugowra has been prioritised as part of that program to get a state-of-the-art system.
There are lots and lots of towns in Australia with similar risk, and lots of towns that are unaware, just like Eugowra was before this flood, about what could happen in a really big flood.